Hello, and welcome to the Parenting Wellness Session offered by Mental Health and Addiction Services. My name is Charlene Payne, and I'm the Regional Mental Health and Addictions Coordinator with Western Health in Corner Brook. Today's session is one of our series of wellness sessions, and these sessions are aimed to provide information on various topics, as well as resources and services that are available. Today's session is about parenting. And the outline for today's session, we're going to start talking a little bit about child development and what to expect at different stages. We'll talk a little bit about temperament or personality styles, parenting styles, overindulgence, communication skills, talking about consequences, as well as the importance of self-care as parents. I always say parenting is one of the hardest jobs there is. There's no specific written rule book, and there's no training required. And it's, definitely difficult as parents to know sometimes if what we are doing with our children is right or not. So learning as much as we can about the different parenting styles, parenting techniques, and learning about children and what to expect from them is very important. In terms of development, we often assume that our children are like little adults, in that, they have hearts of gold sometimes, and we often see them as being reasonable and unselfish. But this is not necessarily the case. It's not true. Kids are born dependent on us. They're unreasonable and they are selfish. They want everything now. So sometimes getting stuck in the little adult assumption can be challenging. In terms of brain development, as children grow, their brains grow and develop as well. There are different stages, 4 different stages of development for children and youth. So the first stage is birth to 2 years, 2 to 7 years, 7 to 11 years, and 12 to 18 years. So I will talk a little bit in more detail in terms of what to expect at each stage of development. And also remember that every child is different. Therefore, some children may be ahead in some areas, but they may lag behind in other areas. And to compare children in the same age categories can be challenging because, again, every child develops differently. Everyone is unique. In the birth to 2 years category, children are equipped with sensory development and motor actions. Sensory development occurs at this stage, and this takes in information through many different paths, including from our eyes, ears, mouth, skin, and our muscles and joints. Motor actions also develop at this stage. A motor skill is an action that involves a baby using muscles. Gross motor skills are larger movements made with arms, their legs, feet, or their entire body. Development starts at the baby's head and then moves down through the body. Children also lack the ability to control themselves. It is the ability to regulate emotions, thoughts, and behavior in the face of temptations and impulses. So they have that lack of self-control. By the end of this stage is what we call symbolic thought. Symbolic thought is a type of thinking in which symbols or internal images are used to represent objects, people, and events that are not present. An example of symbolic thoughts are pretend play, drawing, writing, and speaking. The next stage of development is the ages from 2 to 7 years. And at this stage, youth begin to use symbols to represent their experiences. So this could be in the form of drawing or painting or playing with blocks. They are also egocentric, and this is again thinking only of themselves without regard for the feelings or desires of others. So they're all about themselves. They see things as they are on the surface, so they are unable to see things from a different perspective or point of view. They focus on the before and after a situation. They have difficulty reversing a process. They have problems directing their attention on things. And they also use concrete terms for explaining reasons for doing things. They often define themselves through what they can do. And that's how they define themselves, based on what they can do. The next stage is age 7 to 11 years. And at this stage, they begin to have symbolic and logical thought. Thought processes using symbols, and they can often be logical. Logical thinking is a process of clearly moving from one related thought to another. They have good problem-solving skills. However, they are unable to reflect to gain any new insights. They are able to think concretely and not abstractly. So concrete thinking is literal thinking that is focused on the physical world. It is the opposite of abstract thinking. Abstract thinking is the ability to think about objects, principles, and ideas that are not physically present. So kind of like the term thinking outside the box, they're able to think differently about things. They are able to reference other people when they describe themselves. And being accepted by others are important to them. So at this stage, children are more influenced by peer pressure than they would be, for example, from parents or other sources. And the final stage is ages 12 and up. And at this stage, they are able to think more abstractly, again, but they are still self-centered point of view. So still all about themselves. In terms of teen development, it's important to ask yourself, what am I teaching my child? Parents often forget that teens face and experience difficult challenges on their way to adulthood. And they will often try on many hats before they find one that fits. So they're trying to fit in and find their place in the world. Parents should be strong but flexible at this stage. Once adolescence is over, your child will be steering their own vehicle. But until then, they need an experienced co-pilot to help them on their way. Set clear limits and realistic expectations with your teen, but also respect the struggle for independence that they have and being able to negotiate with them. So thinking about where your child or youth is in terms of their stages of development is important, but also looking at their temperament is another important aspect of learning more about our children. So there are specific characteristics that make all of us unique, because temperament is a set of behavioral characteristics that appear to be inborn and generally remain consistent throughout the lifetime. So kind of like personality traits or our temperament. So the 8 specific areas or characteristics that make us unique. One is sensitivity. And sensitivity is the ability to cope with different levels of stimulation in the environment. So for example, things like noise levels, temperature, textures, or smells. So is your child more sensitive to these things or really not bothered either way? The second is intensity of reaction or response. So this is looking at the energy level of a response. So for example, does your child react to situations with a little bit of fussing, maybe, to an extreme temper tantrum? So there's different levels of intensity in how children react or respond to things. So looking at where your child may be in that area. Third is the activity level. So this is the degree and duration of motor activities. So does your child enjoy more physical activities such as running or jumping, versus other children may be more into reading or on technology. Adaptability to change and new situations is the fourth one. And this is the ability to adjust to new people or changes in the environment, in the family, or in the routine. For example, if there is a move involved, so moving from a different community, moving to a new school, and things like that. So how easily does your child adapt to those changes in routine? The fifth characteristic is persistence and attention span. So this is the ability to stay focused on a certain task. So for example, if your child is working on an activity, do they stick with it until it is completed? Or would they quit when it gets too difficult for them? Six is rhythmicity or regularity. And this is the degree of predictability of time of a child's biological functions. So things like hunger, sleep, toileting. Quality of mood is number 7. And this is overall, what is your child's mood levels? Are they easygoing? Are they friendly? Are they more quiet, slow to warm up to people, more reserved or more shy? And the last one is distractibility. So how easily is attention and their concentration broken by distractions? So how easily distracted are they? So again, it's important to consider both your child's temperament as well as where they are in the stages of development. And then we can adapt as parents to meet their needs based on where they are. When it comes to teens, your teen is absolutely normal if they're moody and emotional, if they do not tend to think of their consequences of their actions, if they seem to be unmotivated, or if they dress in ways that you may find embarrassing, or if they make all the wrong choices, if they're sleeping a lot, or if they're testing your limits. These are all behaviors to expect when your youth becomes a teen and your adolescence. because again, they're trying to find their way in the world. They're trying to find out who they are, what their goals are going to be, what their values are. It's also important to look at sexuality because teens are often bombarded with messages and questions about sex. They often do not feel like talking to their parents about sex or sexuality. And this really limits their ability to get accurate information. So it's important for us as parents to look for teachable moments. So sharing our personal values, we want to model positive behavior, pass on any information, and this could help ease into a discussion. So it's like the birds and the bees talk can be uncomfortable and unnatural, but it doesn't always have to be about intercourse. Talk about emotional and sexual feelings, sexual arousal, curiosity, and development of values around intimacy and sex. After all, this is an essential part of the human experience. You want to treat your teen with respect and keep lines of communication open. So ensure your child is aware that they can talk to you at any time and you are supportive. Allow them to share their thoughts and feelings because we cannot fully control our teen. We won't be there all the time. Try not to use guilt, humiliation, screaming, grounding, or intimidation, as this will only lead to more resentment, hostility, rebellion, and alienation. Teens rebel as they struggle for control, so it's important for parents to give choices. It's important to allow for differences between you, your partner, as well as your child. Again, every person is unique and different, so we need to be flexible when needed. Sometimes we need to adapt our parenting styles and expectations to fit our child's temperament and developmental level. Because again, as the parent, it's your job to adapt. So what works for one person may not work for another. Separation from family. Parental limits and guidance help children and youth feel safe and provide parameters for maintaining control. It's important to model good communication to help them find words to express their emotions. Conflicts about limits are necessary. If our limits are too rigid and inflexible, it runs the risk of the teen rebelling and not following any rules. If our limits are too lenient, this runs the risk of the teen making decisions based on peer values. So it's important to find a balance between setting clear rules and expectations and our limits to be balanced between too rigid and too lenient. As children grow, the goal is for them to move from dependency to increased independence. So again, if you look back through the first stage, birth to 2 years, our children are dependent on us. But as they grow, we need to move from that dependency and foster and allow for their own independence to grow. So as parents, there is a movement from more control to more influence. So being able to do things on their own is important. We teach them, we show them, and let them try it for themselves. As parents, we need to give our children the opportunity to learn, to make mistakes, and correct their mistakes and learn from them. We also need to ensure positive influences for our children, because again, as they grow, they are really influenced by parents. Next, I want to talk about some various and different parenting styles, and there are 4. One type is a permissive parenting style or parenting approach, and this follows kind of a hands-off policy. They do not really control their children. Parents make only few demands on the child. Parents hope that providing freedom will help encourage and develop self-reliance. The parent is more of a friend to the child than a parent. Another parenting style is authoritarian, and this is where parents rely on strictly enforced rules, focusing on punishments and rarely showing warmth. Parents act with a my way or the highway stance. The uninvolved parenting style is the third one, and this is where parents are not responsive, they're undemanding, and they are permissive. They set very few clear boundaries. It may appear that parents are reckless or uncaring. Extreme cases would include neglect. The fourth parenting style is authoritative. This is where parents set clear rules that the children are expected to follow. They include children in family discussions when making decisions. Parents have a warm, open dialogue with the child, and children are encouraged to think independently. This type of parenting typically produces the most well-adjusted children. I want you to take a moment to think about the 4 types of parenting styles and reflect on what you feel your parenting style is. Also think about what it was like for you as a child or teen. What were your parents like? What type of parenting style do you think they used with you? Oftentimes you can look at your own experiences as a child and see if some of your parent styles reflect and can you relate to things you experienced as a child. So looking at how you were parented and how you parent now. I want to talk a moment about overindulgence. So this stems from parental needs, not necessarily the child's needs. It's not the same as spoiling a child, because it's not just about things or stuff. So if a parent provides a child with the majority of their immediate wants and needs without teaching responsibility or compassion, overindulgence can involve having too many material things, excessive toys, sports equipment, and so on. Soft structure. This is where there are no rules for the child dominates or has too much freedom, excessive or unrealistic privileges. Over-nurturing is another type of overindulgence. This is over-loving a child, giving too much attention or doing things for the child. So for example, no chores, they're not expected to learn age-related skills, and things like that. Some of the impacts of overindulgence can be the lack of cause and effect thinking. So they get what they want without any effort, trouble with the law, parents have rescued them from mistakes, or they cannot see how their behavior affects others. There is no respect for parental authority, so they don't listen to their parents. They believe they are entitled to more than what they get. They do not know how to respect or set boundaries. Often they would have low frustration tolerance as well, so their needs and desires need to be met first and fast. They often do not understand the meaning of no. Oftentimes there could be low self-esteem. They may appear to be oppositional, defiant, and they're left emotionally empty with little structure or discipline in their lives, similar to children who have been neglected or abandoned. So it's also important to look at what is a want versus a need. So a want is to have a desire to possess or do something, or a wish. So they want a new toy. That would be a want. A need is something that's required because it is essential or very important. For example, food, clothing, shelter. By giving everything, you are taking the most important things away. We take away their independence, responsibility, and growth. So with overindulgence, it's important to look at what are wants versus needs. It is also important to make special time for you and your children, and this sets the stage for your relationship with your child. Remember appropriate discipline, and effective discipline requires positive rapport, so a positive relationship. So remember that quality is more important than quantity. Spending time with your child is more important than giving them a new toy every week. Spending quality time could be reading books together, puzzles, board games, making family time. But it's also important to remember, again, that each child is different, and we all have individual differences. So basic parenting strategies work for most or all children. However, individuals with certain disabilities or different diagnoses may require different parenting strategies. So keep that in mind as well. Self-care is very important as parents. Raising children requires knowledge, but also knowledge of our own needs as parents. Your well-being impacts your parenting. Also, your relationship with your partner is an important aspect of parenting. So looking at a house, you need a solid foundation. It will fall apart if it's not built on that positive, solid foundation, and we need to replenish our energy sources. So again, with partners, you don't need to agree or like how each one parents, but it is important to talk about it and ensure you support each other at the moment of discipline. Self-care is essential to the physical, emotional, and spiritual health of any person. Some examples of self-care activities could include listening to music, taking a walk, draw, painting, reading a book, a warm bubble bath, learning something new, baking, gardening, crafts, woodworking, building. Any activity that allows you to spend time quietly with yourself is self-care. What's not included as self-care would be drinking alcohol, using other substances, or gambling, overeating, watching television, surfing the net. These would not be considered self-care. Self-care is about taking care of all of your needs and giving yourself time to spend alone to reflect and think about how you are doing. So moderation and balance are key and very important. For some people, it's helpful to make or create a self-care plan. So in terms of your meeting your mental or emotional, psychological needs, reading or learning new skills, talking to friends. For some people, it might be just reminders to take their medication. Physically, to get more active, to eat healthy, skincare, and emotional could be helping other people, creativity, hot bubble baths, and all of these activities are connected and related. Self-care is not being selfish or self-indulgent. We cannot nurture others from a dry well. We need to take care of our own needs first. Then we can give from our surplus, our abundance. And that's a quote by Jennifer Loudon. A person who is humble would never be abusive or selfish. So don't abuse yourself or withhold self-love or self-care. Communication skills are very, very important in terms of parenting our children. It's a key to having a healthy, positive relationship. It helps us find out more about our child or teen if we have that communication with them. Using simple communication skills will help you connect with your teen. It's important to listen first and talk second. Remember, if your relationship with your child has been broken, that did not happen overnight. So it will take time to repair that relationship or rebuild it or build it new. Sometimes we can get caught up in what we call communication traps. And one of those traps is talking too much. It's kind of like we become the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, because they tune us out. If we talk too much or try to reason with them, try to explain things, this can be ineffective because sometimes they just do not understand. So keeping messages short and simple is very important when disciplining. Too much emotion can be a communication trap as well. So when we act with too much emotion, the message gets lost. They only see the emotion. They do not hear the words that we are saying. It can often escalate the situation as well. Sometimes we can get caught up in emotional dumping, and that's where we take out our frustrations on the children. It's important to find healthy ways to deal with your feelings. Remember to take care of yourself. Sometimes we need to take a little time out or a little breather to let our emotions settle and then discuss the situation. Another communication trap is trying to solve the problems while we are angry. It's important to return to the discussion when tempers are cooled. Again, sometimes we take timeouts also. Nagging, again, this could teach children not to be responsible. Lecturing often does not work. Our children would feel targeted or blamed often. And arguing can be helpful at times, but if it becomes disrespectful, that's when it becomes a problem. Some helpful communication tools to keep in mind is to maintain regular and good eye contact, give them our full attention, no interrupting, so let them, if they are speaking, let them finish. And it's also important to keep in mind our nonverbal responses, because our nonverbal communication can give messages that we're not aware of sometimes. So if we are standing very firm with our arms crossed, doing kind of like a stare, then that can interfere with our children's ability to share what they're feeling. If we have a more open posture, a more relaxed posture, then that gives a feeling that they can, it's a safe time and comfortable time for them to share. Reflecting is also important, and reflecting is looking at, repeating back to the person what they have just said to you. So reflecting content is identifying the gist of what was said. So people feel good when they feel like they have been heard. So it sounds like our rules and for curfew is unfair for you. So using statements such as that. Reflecting feelings is also important. So identify and acknowledge the feelings of the other person. It lets the child know that what they are feeling is okay. And we always need to give the message that feelings are neither right nor wrong, good or bad. Feelings are just that, feelings. All feelings are okay. All feelings have a purpose. And we need to let our children know that. And that helps foster and build self-esteem as well. It's very important to use I statements. These statements are less threatening than those that start with you. And it also avoids arguments, and there's less blaming as well. So for example, saying I feel rather than you make me feel is better. I feel frustrated when you leave your clothes all over the floor. It's also important to use we statements. There is less resistance when setting limits. So it also encourages teamwork and cooperation, making the child feel that they are a part of and an equal part of the family. So giving a message, we don't hit people. So you're instilling family values. With communication also, it's important to offer choices. So let the child choose between two things. This provides freedom, but also limits. If they won't choose, repeat the choices or tell them you will choose for them. Praise them for choosing and stick with what they have chose. This could be as simple as what they want to wear to school that day. You give them two choices and allow them the freedom to choose. Alternatives to saying no. Hearing no all the time can be frustrating for children. Maybe instead you could say, yes, we can do that on Sunday. Yes, as soon as you are done your homework. So if they ask to do something and our automatic response sometimes is no, because you have homework to do first. So just rephrase that statement to say, yes, you can do that when you finish your homework. So it's just changing how we speak to them. Positive feedback is also important. And this is used to change behavior. It encourages self-responsibility. It fosters healthy self-control and arouses empathy and builds self-esteem in our children. So if we see them succeed at something or accomplish something, we need to give them positive feedback for that. Negative feedback is used to stop a behavior. Example, punishment. Using positive reinforcement is important as well. So using praise. Children like our attention and acknowledgement of their efforts. So praising their efforts, not necessarily the outcomes. So you know what? You tried really hard to build that Lego set, and I'm really proud of you. Elements of praise are praising the act. So good job doing your homework. Praising the start and ongoing effort. So it's kind of like blowing on sparks to create a fire. It's important, timing is important, so praise immediately during or right after a behavior. We also want to highlight it, making the moment special. Our tone should match the good feeling, so using our tone and pitch and volume of our voice to say, oh, I'm really proud of you, oh my goodness. So it's using our tone as well. Making it about your child, so using the positive reinforcements that suits your child. And avoid sarcasm. So for example, good job, now only if you had done it sooner. Because again, that's not going to foster the self-esteem, the confidence. And avoid saying things like, I told you so. Positive attention. Children need to get recognized for the things they are doing well. If they are only getting attention for behaving poorly, then what is being reinforced, really? The negative. It's also important to include incentives, so positive consequences. So do something special to show you are proud of them. So if they help with supper, for example, they get to choose what dessert to have. It doesn't have to be going and buying them things to praise and show, that we're proud of them. It can be simple things. So it's important to praise what you want to keep and ignore what you want to go away. I just want to read this out, called Please Listen. When I ask you to listen to me and you start giving me advice, you have not done what I asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you are trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problem, you have failed me. Strange as that may seem, listen. All I ask is that you listen. Don't talk or do. Just hear me. Listening seems like an easy skill, but it can be quite challenging. To truly listen, we need to give that person our undivided attention. Putting down your cell phone or the newspaper, turn off the television or the radio. That person needs your undivided, uninterrupted attention. Allow them to set the pace. Don't push them. Give them time that they need to process and work through what they're trying to tell you. We don't have to solve the problem. Oftentimes as parents, we get stuck in wanting to fix. but we don't always have to be that superhero. You are there to help your teen develop self-understanding and responsibility. Poor listening skills would be things like spacing out. So that could be just caught up in your own thoughts, thinking about what you need to get for supper. Pretend listening, and that's not really paying attention. So you're just kind of that grin and nod. Yeah, yeah. And the message is that they are not important. Selective listening is paying attention to the part that interests you, but not everything that the person is saying. Word listening is listening only to the words and not focusing on the nonverbal messages that our child might be telling us. Self-centered listening is when we see things from only our point of view. So maybe trying to one-up one another. While we're listening to that person telling us something, we're already thinking about our response or how we're going to react. So in doing that, we're not really focused on what that person is telling us. Sometimes we have certain expectations. Unrealistic expectations are based on your goals and your ambitions, and not focused on the stage, abilities, or interests of your child. So that's unrealistic expectations. Realistic expectations are healthy expectations. You allow them to be their own person, adjusted and responsible. So unhealthy in disguise could be how good is good and how smart is smart. And sometimes no expectations. And this can be devastating. And this is projecting your own or other issues on the teen. Preventative discipline. And this is more proactive versus reactive. So for example, telling them not to do something before they do it instead of arguing about it later. So don't wait until after the behavior. Tell them about it before. Set the environment for success. Predictability is important. So it's important to be consistent, to have a structure or a routine in place, maybe set family rules and post them on your refrigerator. Consistency allows children to behave more appropriately. So it's important that they understand what's expected of them. Redirection and distraction. This is for kids under 2. So you move to something else or make another thing more interesting. If they're focused on something or doing things that you don't necessarily want them to do, distraction and redirection can be important. Oh, hey, why don't we go and do this instead? You know, so they're easily distracted, you know, from one thing to another. Grandma's rule. So if you eat veggies, you get dessert. Effectively using your voice. So if you do yell, they hear the yell and not the message. So again, always keep in mind what our tone of voice is and the volume of our voice. Announcements. Children find it hard to switch gears, so letting them know that a transition is coming up. So 10 more minutes before bedtime. So letting them finish the activity that they're doing, giving them time for that. So rather than say, okay, put it down, it's bedtime. Okay, you've got 10 minutes or 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you're comfortable with. And that gives them time to prepare. And fun and games is important. So most things can be made into a game for children. So offering choices again, making something a competition, beating the clock. If it's tidying their room or making their bed, make it like a fun, interactive game. It doesn't always have to be rigid. So that's preventative discipline techniques. Now I want to talk about more corrective discipline. And things that do not work would be things like corporal punishment. So using physical discipline or violence is not acceptable and not okay. Also, cheap shots do not work. So asking a child or youth a question that you already know the answer to. So basically asking the child to lie. Wrongly used timeout, again, it's not a punishment, but time with no positive reinforcement. Avoid forced apologies. And if the child loses something, give them an opportunity to earn it back. So things that you would expect from them, and they may get that item back. Only if they earn it and they do what is expected. Children test us almost always, and oftentimes may use manipulation. And this is really a struggle for control to get what they want. And sometimes it's about kind of revenge to get parents to feel bad or to feel guilty. That's the whole purpose behind their testing behaviors and manipulation. Because again, remembering back to the stages of development, often they are egocentric. So again, they're all about themselves. So they are going to try to manipulate and test us in any way possible. So some of the techniques that they use to test us and manipulate would be things like badgering us. So harping at you over and over again. The parent version is nagging. So basically when we nag our children, it's similar to badgering. The goal here is to wear you down, to get you to give in and say yes, so that they can be quiet and just, okay, take it and go. Intimidation is another. Things like temper tantrums, yelling, swearing, or accusing you of bad parenting. This can inspire extreme anger or fear for the parent. So the goal here is to make you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes they use threats. They state or imply that some bad consequence will happen if their wish is not granted. So the goal here is to make you feel anxious. Parents lose their credibility when children use this strategy, but they do not follow through. Martyrdom is another one. So here's where they may sulk or cry or pout or refuse to eat, refuse to talk. Life is now horrible because of the parental request. So the goal here is to make you feel guilty as a parent. Buttering up is another technique that children use, and that's where they give compliments, they promise something nice, they spontaneously do a chore, when not asked. There's nothing wrong with making a deal. So, for example, with a teen, it could be you have the car if you clean your room. But with buttering up, they would come up and say, oh, Mom, you look so pretty today, or oh, Dad, let me help you do this first. And so promising something nice. If you let me do or play the game, then I'll wash the dishes. So buttering up. And sometimes they use physical tactics. So attacking other people, injuring pets, or breaking things. This may need outside intervention, and it's the least common form that's used. Sometimes you may have to involve the police or other supports to manage this. So basically, children push the buttons that have worked in the past. So they know what techniques has worked. Oh, well, Mom always gives in if I just, keep asking, can I? so they know what does work for them. So think about Coke machine, right? You put in $1 for a Coke. You try the first one. If nothing comes out, you press it another few times and then move to the next one. This is the same as parenting. Your child will push your buttons until they realize there is no response. So as you get better at not giving in, your child may either turn up the amp on one tactic or turn to another tactic. This is a positive sign, so just hang in there. So again, that Coke machine, they're trying the different buttons to see what may work. So you never give in after the teen has begun testing you. This just reinforces a behavior. They push the buttons that have worked in the past. So broken record technique. Repeat the same message over and over until they stop. So for example, in our house, we don't hit each other. Do not add on to the sentence. So just become a broken record. Looking at consequences of behaviors. So the purpose of discipline is to help children develop responsibility for their own actions and choices while building and maintaining positive relationships with them. It's not about making children do what we want, but preparing them for times when we are not around to help them make rational and responsible decisions. Consequences are important tools that we have as parents to help change behavior and instill responsibility. Again, remember that teens have not developed what we call executive functioning. Therefore, they are not great at predicting cause and effect. Because youth brains are actually developing up until around age 24. So keep that in mind as well, that we assume that when they become 18, they're an adult now, but sometimes with our brain development and that cause and effect thinking, that executive functioning doesn't develop until the later years into early 20s. So again, consequences can be natural consequences. So it's when they experience real life events. So if the weather is cold outside and they are determined that they're not wearing their mittens and let them go outside, the natural consequence to that is their hands will get cold. Another example is you don't study, and if you don't listen in class, then you may fail and not do well. So giving them natural consequences, and that way they can learn that they need to become more responsible. They learn for themselves. There are also more logical consequences, and this creates a consequence where there's no natural one exists. So if they ride their bike with no helmet, then we as parents would set that consequence: you lose your bike for 2 days. If they take the car and don't put any gas in the tank, they can lose the car for 2 days. So giving consequences where no natural one exists. That's our role as parents. Sometimes it's okay to delay the consequence. So this allows the parents to think about a consequence, and it also allows the child to think about their actions. So if there's a behavior, rather than instill the consequence immediately, it's okay to take a few minutes or 10 minutes to, again, allow parents to think about what consequence would be appropriate. And it also gets the child to think about their behavior. They should be definite and time limited. So start and finish period of the consequence should be clearly stated. So remember, the time must fit the crime. So again, with the bike helmet, maybe lose the bike for 2 days. Conferencing techniques. When discussing consequences with your youth, how you set up the discussion will go a long way in how the conversation will proceed. Always begin and end on a positive note and deal with the issue in the middle. So for example, you can start the conversation by saying, I care about you and I want you to, whatever your goal would be with them. Do not enforce consequences when the behavior is occurring. So don't punish the child for being on the phone while they are on the phone. Wait until they're finished the phone call and then talk about the consequences and punishment. So again, some discipline traps to avoid is being inconsistent. So if you say you're going to give a consequence and you don't follow through with that, that's being inconsistent. Another trap is to, again, avoid focusing on the negative. Try not to overdo it or underdo it, and feeling that a one style fits all. So again, everyone and every youth is different. Even if you have more than one child, you know, most times they have different personalities and different differences in their behaviors. So that's important to keep in mind. The main principles of consequences, it is again allowing our children to make choices. Youth need a safe environment to practice independence. Natural and logical consequences allow for children to make a choice and also learn from those choices. So for example, you can choose to take the bus now or to drive with me later. Remember, it's all about learning. It's a child's job to test our limits. View misbehavior as a learning experience instead of a personal violation. Talking less and acting more. Parents hinder effectiveness by talking too much, so keep talking to a minimum. For example, kids respond more to a locked up bike than a lecture about bike safety. Staying calm and be open to negotiation. Becoming emotionally aroused causes the same in children and the message is lost. Allow the youth to be a part of the consequence. They are more likely to take ownership if they can have a say in the consequence. So getting them to think about, what do you think an appropriate consequence is for that behavior? And giving them that opportunity helps them become more responsible as well. At the end, you as a parent would choose. So if they provided you with 3 possible consequences, then the parent still can choose which one of those 3. But including our youth in the consequences is important. Encouraging independence. More independence means a more responsible, happy adult. So do not do for your child what they can do for themselves. So who owns the problem? It's also important to not get too concerned with what other people think. Many parents fear disapproval from others, and children's behavior does not necessarily reflect on the parents as people. Kids are independent beings, so we don't have to get caught up in that. Refuse to fight or give in. So set limits and allow your child to decide how to respond, and be willing to accept your child's decision. And remember, consequences should be immediate and definite. This is a model called the parenting pyramid. So the pyramid was developed by an American psychologist who has written a popular parenting book called The Incredible Years. The Incredible Years. It's by Charlene Webster Stratton. So child-directed play or quality time, descriptive praise, and regards form the solid base of the pyramid. So looking at the bottom 2, providing incentives, praise, building social competence, promoting positive parent-child relationships are the foundation. These are then followed by positive discipline techniques, including rules and limit setting, selective ignoring, timeout, and alternatives to timeout. So increasing that cooperation, effective limit setting, distraction, redirection, decrease aggression, and using timeout. So these techniques we use more selectively, and we use the bottom more liberally. So the parenting pyramid reminds parents that the tools that promote cooperation should be used liberally, while the positive discipline tools are used more sparingly. These tools work best for children in the 3 to 10 age range. Again, as I say, parenting is one of the hardest jobs out there. It's very difficult and challenging each and every day. Sometimes there's new challenges. But it's important to know that there are supports out there, and if you're struggling with an issue with your child or children, remember you don't have to do everything alone. So looking at who is in your support network that can help you, looking at emotional support, who can you talk to, who can provide you with a sense of encouragement, who can give you guidance or instruction, who can help with homework or transportation, practical support, and who can help you with gaining more insight and information. So it's important to make a list of people in your life that could help. Your support network could be family, friends, co-workers. And where would you seek professional help? It could be community groups, organizations, parenting support groups, employee wellness programs, mental health and addiction services. And mental health and addiction services is a service offered to people who may be experiencing a challenging time in their lives. We support individuals who are living with mental health and/or addiction issues, as well as their families. We provide a range of services and programs: individual counseling, group counseling, family counseling, couples counseling. We do offer services to children, youth, and their families as well. Education and skill development, referral to other services, and there are also a variety of e-mental health services and supports online. Anyone can make contact with your local mental health and addiction services office within the province, and you can call on behalf of yourself or a family member, or it can come from another health professional that you may be involved with. Here is a list of some crisis and helpline numbers. Our mental health crisis line is 1-888-737-4668. You can also use our crisis text line, and you can text TALK to 686868. Kids Help Phone is a wonderful resource as well, and it's 1-800-668-6868. Channel Warm Line is another support line, 1-855-753-2560. First Nations and Inuit Hope for Wellness Helpline is 1-855-242-3310. Our Newfoundland and Labrador Sexual Assault Crisis and Prevention 24-hour line is 1-800-726-2743. Smokers Helpline 1-800-363-5864, and our Newfoundland and Labrador Health line is 811. We also have a mental health and addictions systems navigator, and this individual helps individuals, family members, and service providers. It also serves as a central point of contact for provincial mental health and addiction services and supports. The Systems Navigator helps improve the individual's mental health journey by increasing knowledge and awareness, identifying and addressing system barriers, and improving coordination among services, while ensuring continuity of care across services. We also have our provincial website called bridgethegap.ca, and GAP is with 2 P's. This instantly provides access on a variety of mental health and addiction topics. They provide advice, inspiration, assurance, or direction for finding additional supports when you need it the most. They have sections available for youth and sections for adults as well. This is available for free on your computer, tablet, or your phone. Features include a service directory, a knowledge center, a Get Inspired space where you can share experiences, also a link to online programs and services, and also has a toolbox where you can access relaxation techniques and different resources on a number of topics. We also have a mental health and substance use screening program online. It's called checkitoutnl.ca. This is a fast and free mental health checkup. It's anonymous online screening tools for adults 18 and over. You answer questions based on how you are feeling, and you would get results, recommendations, as well as key resources. We also provide a Doorways walk-in service throughout the province, and this is providing single session rapid access to mental health and addiction counseling services, 1 session at a time. This is available for youth and adults 12 and older. While most locations offer a walk-in service, some locations provide same day, next day, or appointments by phone. I want to thank you all for joining our parenting wellness session. Again, my name is Charlene Payne, and I appreciate you joining in on our sessions, and also consider observing our other sessions that we provide as well. Also, here's a list of our websites: bridgethegap.ca, checkitoutnl.ca, or you can visit any of your regional health authorities' website. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.